This is a presentation of National Streaming Sports. Over 20 podcasters, 70 weekly shows, and a 3.4-star rating on Roku TV.
I mean, you can see right now, without LeBron, Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about a team I hate, all right? I know the Dallas Cowboys fan is here, so I had to make sure he knew how much I hate this team.
I'm ready.
I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have a problem saying it to his face. Oh, I'm from Brooklyn. Hey, you guys any...
Hi, everybody. How you doing today? I'm Mac McGrath, of course, with National Streaming Sports. I got a real special guest for you today, folks. A legendary sports broadcaster right from my hometown in Connecticut, known as the voice of the Huskies, play-by-play for 8 national championships, men and women. ESPN Sports Center guest. He was personally my and thousands of listeners, go-to guy on WTIC radio for sports coverage. He covered the local professional teams, Red Sox, Patriots, Celtics, Yankees, Giants, Knicks, just to name a few. And of course, the minor league teams here in Connecticut too. Listen, he was Dick Vitale's Sweet 16 play-by-play announcers in the country. And not only that, he was named Broadcaster of the Year by the National Sportscasters Sports Writers Association. Let's bring up my favorite Connecticut sports broadcaster of all time, Joe Ambrosio. How you doing, Joe?
If I'd known you were going to put on a hat, I would have brought one. How are you?
I'm doing good. This is kind of my signature, I guess. I'm famous for it on all our programs that I'm on. So I wear this.
In the words of Walt Frazier, styling and profiling.
Thank you very much, Joe. Joe, I want to get back to the beginning when you were young, right? I mean, you had to play some sports. You had to be drawn to some sports teams and follow those teams. What made you so attracted to sports when you were younger? What sports did you play, and who were your favorite teams when you were growing up?
My dad. My dad helped start the sports program for the East Hartford Police Athletic League, even though he wasn't a policeman. And that's how I got into it. He got me my first glove, my first bat, my first football. He was a sports fan. He wasn't as big a sports fan as I became, but he was still pretty, every Sunday back in the old days, and you'll remember this, Mac, we had to have Sunday dinner at 12:30 because the Giants came on Channel 3 at 2 o'clock back then.
That's true.
So, and I was just always drawn to sports. I was never a great athlete or even a good athlete, but I had fun playing. I played baseball. I played basketball. I played football. Couldn't skate, so I didn't play regular hockey, but I played a crazy brand of indoor hockey that was insane. And I just was always attracted to the media side of it because I knew that I wasn't going to be good enough to be an athlete, but I wanted sports to be my vocation. So it started for me at an early age. I was lucky. I knew what I wanted to do.
That's great. Me too, Joe. Sports and music were my two passions growing up, and I know that you started as a DJ at WLIS with a program called Twilight Time, an oldies show. Is that a reference to the Platters, Twilight Time, or was that just the name because you were?
Well, because the show was on, I actually started there as a weekend guy back in the summer of '78, and then I moved to middays, and then we switched people's schedules around. So we came up with Twilight Time. That was just a reference to the time that the show was on. The show was on from 6 until 8, but we would use Twilight Time as like the theme of the show. But yeah, I loved being a DJ. That was the other thing. If I couldn't have been Marv Albert, I wanted to be Dan Ingram. So, I love the concept of blending songs together. I love the talking. People tell you I talk too much. That's fine. But I loved my time at WLIS because that's basically where I got my start in broadcasting. And because it was a smaller station and I had great bosses in John Powers and Mike Rice, I basically did everything. I did disc jockeys. I did news. We did high school sports play-by-play shorts here on the Shoreline, which is where I am now. They even had a sense of humor, and they made me operations manager for a while. So I was really able at WLIS, and I didn't start there till I was 25, but I was really able at WLIS to get my foot in the door and find out what the business was all about.
Yeah, see, we have some things in common, and that's why I started too. I started as a disc jockey. My favorite music of all time is the early rock and roll. The hard driving blues from like 53 to 58. I love the doo-wop. I grew up in a 50s house, so I knew all the music, the years, the names of the groups. I mean, so that's where I started too, was actually DJing, and then I moved into to kind of what I'm doing now. So
and now I've kind of rolled back into that with my work at WJMJ in Prospect. Being a DJ there and doing our Thanksgiving Day high school football game.
That's excellent. So what changed your path? I mean, what changed your path from just being a DJ? You said you did some news and sports to really going full-time sports, Joe. What happened there that made you do that?
It's what I always wanted to do. The DJ stuff was fun. The news stuff was good. I would anchor our local election night coverage, which I loved. But play-by-play sports always, from the time I was a little kid, I was attracted to that. And that's what I wanted to do. I would be that nerdy kid who sat in front of his TV and did play-by-play in his head, whether it was the Yankees or the Giants or the Knicks or the Rangers or whoever it was. My friends will tell you when we played basketball out in the backyard, I would do play-by-play of those games. I deny that. It's probably a little true, but I deny that. But play-by-play was always my passion, and it's what I wanted to get into.
What was your break that got you, to end up doing play-by-play for the UCONN Huskies?
Well, I had through my work at WLIS, I became friends with Wayne Norman, who I ended up doing the games with for 26 years because we had a mutual boss. He worked in Willimantic. I worked in Old Saybrook, but the stations were owned by Nutmeg Broadcasting and the great Mike Rice. So there was a time that Marty Glickman, the legend Marty Glickman, was doing UConn on the radio for Connecticut Radio Network. Well, he got in an accident driving to a game one night, and they grabbed me and said, "Can you do the play-by-play?" And I was already doing high school play-by-play of basketball and other sports at WLIS. So I jumped in, and it went pretty well. And I was the fill-in guy for like 4 years. Then there was a period where I didn't do that. I did some stuff, Hartford Hawks on TV, a couple of big UConn games on TV. And then in May of 92, when the contract went from Connecticut Radio Network to WTIC, the late Arnold Dean, who was one of my mentors, said, "Would you like to come over and do the games?" And I was like a dog salivating. I was like, yeah, of course I would. Because I grew up, Max, listening to George Ehrlich and Floyd Richards do UConn games on WTIC radio back in the days where hardly any games were on television. The only way you could follow them was on the radio for the most part. And it's what I always wanted to do. And so that door opened in 92, and then it closed when the rights changed to what's 97.9. And I wanted to go. I didn't want to stay at TIC. I wanted to go. But unfortunately, I had a year left on my contract at WTIC. And my boss Steve Salhaney and I had knockdown, drag out, screaming argument. Why won't you let me go? I've given you 26 years. No, you're not going to our biggest rivals and stuff. And then finally one day we sat down. He said, look, and he's a Red Sox fan. He said, let me lay this out for you. He said, you're a Yankee fan, right? I said, yeah, you know that. He said, Red Sox, the Yankees aren't letting Aaron Judge walk across the street to the Red Sox. I said, okay. I said, now you've made it clear. Now I understand. I said, now pay me like Aaron Judge. But that wasn't about that. So and now I've been lucky to stay. I was always lucky to stay in touch with UConn by covering them, doing a couple baseball games on Fox when I worked at Fox 61. And now with UConn Plus, their digital platform, I'm doing more UConn sports than I've ever done before. I'm doing a couple of men's soccer games, a couple of women's soccer games, almost all the volleyball games, which I love. They're off to a terrific start. I'll do all but one or two hockey games. And then in the spring, I'll do softball and I'll do all the women's lacrosse games. So I still have a phenomenal connection with the school.
That's excellent, Joe. That's excellent. Before I want to revisit ESPN with you after this. So you get into UConn. They become the college basketball, a dominant 8 years. How good does it feel? How lucky do you feel that you got in and UConn takes off? And here you are from Connecticut, right? A lot of college broadcasters never got this opportunity. And now all of a sudden you're nationally known as, the voice of UConn, and you're out at every tournament. Here you are out there doing play-by-play. That's got to feel awesome, Joe.
The best part was broadcasting in my home state where my friends and family could listen to me. That to me was the best thing. High school, grammar school friends who I'm still friendly with today could listen to me do the games and stuff. I never took for granted what I did. It was a cherished position. And I tell people say, do you miss it? And I said, I miss the people. I miss the interaction with the student athletes on the basketball and football teams, even though I get that now with the teams I'm with, though not quite as much because it's a different scenario. But I miss traveling with Wayne and with the writers. We had great times together. But I don't miss the travel one bit. Everything I do now is at home, be it the UConn stuff or Hartford Athletic, who I do the TV play-by-play for of their home games. And I said, to be honest with you, I was there when things were great. And they're really good now, but they were great back then. And I feel fortunate that I was the guy to do it at that time.
Yeah, it's something that, that I guess if you're a kid growing up, you dream about something like this, and here it is coming true. That's got to be a hell of a feeling, Joe. It really.
It's the best. It was the best. It was the best. Like I said, to do it, the team that I followed as a kid growing up, and then to do their games and to do all those championships, 4 with the men, 4 with the women, Fiesta Bowl with football, Super Regional with baseball, hockey getting into the Big East. I couldn't have. Would I have liked to have done Yankees or Giants? Probably. Do I regret not doing them? No, because I was in my home state.
Okay, so speaking of UConn, Los Angeles Lakers made Dan Hurley an offer he considered making. He considered it. He seriously considered it. His wife, and they offered him to be like the 6th highest paid coach in the NBA. Do you think if the Lakers threw the kitchen sink at him, made him the highest paid coach, do you think that he might have gone to the Lakers?
No, not right now, because I think he felt I think he loves the challenge of trying to become the first team since UCLA to win 3 times in a year. And Andrea loves it here, his wife. She did an event on Friday night with a crowd that was sold out that I heard was an amazing event. Kind of just talking basketball and life, and they had a couple of players there. So I don't, and plus here's the thing. He's 51. If he has a couple more successful seasons, the Knicks are going to, when Tom Thibodeau decides to call it quits, Knicks will throw everything and the kitchen sink at him.
Yes.
And he'll stay east where he'll be near his dad and his mom who are getting up in years. So I don't think he would have taken it. I think he explored it. I don't think it was a bad idea. I think if it rang up his price at UConn, good for him. That's bargaining. There's nothing wrong with that. But I don't think he would have gone right now.
I got you. And I felt the same way. I predicted he was going to stay. Even when this first started on my shows, I said he's not going. He's going to stay. He wants a 3.
Well, plus, who wants to deal with the whole LeBron Bronny crap?
Oh, that was one of my main points.
Right?
That was one of my main points, Joe. I mean, that guy's got more coaches fired than I think, the owner of the Panthers, for God's sakes. I mean, that guy is crazy. So the late 70s, right? I'm a Yankees fan like you. I suffered through the mid 60s all the way up to about 75, 76 when they started playing. The rivalry between them and Boston at that point, 75, 76, 77, 78. I mean, those, I think, Joe, were the 2 best teams, not counting the big red machine that Boston lost to, but in Game 7, I think those were the 2 best teams in the MLB. I think whoever really won the pennant there, we didn't have wild cards back then. I think either one of them, if it wasn't the Yankees, I think the Red Sox might have won some of those World Series.
They might have. There were 78, the second best team in baseball was the Red Sox, clearly.
Yes.
77, the Reds were still really good, but the Red Sox were on the come. And the thing about those teams was they truly did not like one another. Munson and Fisk hated one another. Lee and Nettles hated one another. Everybody hated Rice. Everybody hated Mickey Rivers from the other side. Nettles wasn't beloved. It was a real rivalry. Now it's a rivalry in name only. There's not that feeling of animosity from one side to the other.
Yes. And, I got lucky enough to interview Roy White, my first hero. I interviewed him, and he had a book he came out with. My friend wrote the book, the autobiography.
Oh, wow.
Compton to the Bronx. Dr. Paul Semendinger, unbelievable writer. So I matched him up with Roy White. He's and they did it, and it's out there for sale right now. So anybody out there? Yes. So Roy White is still a gentleman as he was back then. He's an incredible human being. So anyway, your thought. I predicted, today I want to get to today's sports with you. Wait, let's go back to ESPN real quick because I got a question for you. Did ESPN and WTIC, did they talk at all? Did ESPN say I'll buy out his last year? Was there?
Oh no, I never went to ESPN. ESPN was never a full-time job for me. In 96, TIC was an affiliate of ESPN, would run their weekend programmings. And the program director at ESPN, this wonderful person named Len Weiner, heard me filling in on the 3 to 6 talk show. He knew of my sports acumen, but he heard me filling in on a talk show. So he contacted me and said, we need a sports center anchor. This is all radio, never any TV. He said, we need a sports center anchor. And I went to my management at TIC. I said, I have a chance to work weekends at ESPN. It won't interfere with any of my UConn stuff or anything here. So they said, that's great. That's great publicity for us. So I was there from 96 to about 2012. I got to do signature events. I was the host of the Sunday NFL Countdown with Mark May and then the missile, Quadre Ismail. I would talk to Chris Morton, the late Chris Mortensen, and Tom Jackson and John Clayton, the late John Clayton, every Sunday morning during the football season. I'll tell you what, I've never learned more football than I learned from those guys. Because Mort and TJ were in Bristol for Countdown. So they'd come to the studio. And the best time, I'll be honest with you, the best time is when they shot the crap after we got done talking to Mort before we talked to Tommy. They were amazing. And all the people there were great. The TV anchors were terrific. we had a phenomenal crew on radio. Tony Bruno, who hosted the morning show before Greeny. Tony was the funniest man I've ever worked with in radio. Mike Golick, Dan Patrick, and Kornheiser, and Todd Wright, and Jay Reynolds, and Freddie Coleman, who's amazing there now, does a phenomenal job hosting at night. We had great behind-the-scenes people. And through ESPN, I got to do what might have been the most, I'm not sure how I would describe it, but I hosted the baseball pre- and post-game show. And for the playoffs, I would go to the middle 3 games of the World Series because I had UConn conflicts on the weekends with football. So 2001, I was actually on the field, far down the left field line, because that's where the Secret Service put us. But I was on the field when President Bush threw out that memorable first pitch. It was an experience I will never forget.
Wow, that's awesome. And
never forget. I was there for the home runs by Martinez and Ambrosio.
Right.
In games 4 and 5.
Wow.
So
that's you can't beat it. I mean, that's the fun part of being this, right? Is meeting people. I've met a lot of NFL players, a lot of talk show hosts. I said Roy White, Phil Simms, interview music. I mean, that's the most fun about doing something like this. I mean, I like doing the shows, but the people like you, I get to meet and talk to, and I would never meet otherwise, and that's what makes this so great.
I'm not sure I'd put me up there with Roy White and Phil Simms.
Well,
but it's fun. Yes. It's when I did all the talk shows I did at TIC, I became great friends with John Sterling. We're friends to this day. I knew Bob Papa, Bob Sochi, Bob Wischusen, all the major Mike Breen, all the major play-by-play people. I have had a chance to Mike Tirico. When I lost the UConn job, Mike was working for Golf Channel covering the Travelers, and that summer he saw me in the media center, and he came in furious. What the hell's going on? Blah blah blah. And I said, it's a contract thing. What can I do? Chris Berman and I became very friendly and are to this day. So I've been lucky. I've got no complaints. I've been extremely lucky.
So let's get to today's sports. I mean, I predicted early out. Now, of course, being from here, I'm a Yankee fan, but I follow the Red Sox because it's part of being in Connecticut. You one or the other or both, And I thought the Red Sox would be a little bit better than they are. I knew they would struggle a little bit. They got a young team. I thought they would make a wild card appearance. It doesn't look that way now. They're kind of fumbling a little bit. So between them and the Yankees without a closer, I'm worried, Joe. I mean, I'm worried. I mean, we got one of the best baseball players in the game with Aaron Judge. Soto's great, and then and
Austin Wells should be Rookie of the Year. To be fair,
he's had a good year.
Austin Wells should be Rookie of the Year.
Yes.
Here's the thing. Here's what I think. The closer issue is a problem. I think Weaver can close, but I think the closer thing is an issue. I don't trust the starting pitching as far as I can throw it. Yes. Rodon can be great and then stink. And Stroman can be great and then stink. And the same thing with Cortez. And it's a different year for Cole because of the late start. They could go in and get to the World Series, or they could lose in the opening round if the pitching's not there. The Red Sox, I think, are a year away. I think they've had a better year than people expected. I just don't think they have enough pitching.
I agree.
And
with
their bullpen stinks. Their bullpen makes the Yankees bullpen look like the 60, 96, 97, 98 Yankee bullpen.
Yes, I agree. And, they're very young and they had a lot of injuries. I think if they didn't have them injuries, they'd still be in there battling. And here's the thing. If they go into the Bronx and take 3 or 4, God forbid, they're going to be right there in the wild card chase going down the last couple of weeks. I agree.
And they've got one of the best managers in baseball in Alex.
Again, I agree.
I would trade Boone for Cora in a heartbeat.
It would take me less than that. I'd have him on the play as soon as the call's made. Joe, so The Patriots surprised the Bengals. The Patriots defense is always good. Gerard Mayo, coach with Bill Parcells, played defense for Bill Parcells. I expected that. They pull one off in Cincinnati. I don't know if that's, I think they'll be competitive, but they're not going to win a lot of games. The Giants, on the other hand, Daniel Jones is having a problem. I mean, he's coming off an injury too. The media's all over him. The fans are all over him. And I don't care what they do. It doesn't matter. They're not going to the Super Bowl. They didn't pick up a quarterback at draft. They had Penix was there. Bo Nix was there. They said, the heck with that. We're going to get our wide receiver. So I know Daniel Jones is quarterback of the year unless he gets hurt. That's going to be the way it is. What are your thoughts? Does he bounce back against the Commanders, who he dominates for some reason? He beats the Commanders all the time. I think he's like 5. Does he bounce back this week, or does this continue? And I mean, they're going to keep calling for him to be, benched.
Put it this way, Mac, if it doesn't bounce back this week, you have to wonder when it will. Now, the Commanders are different with Dan Quinn as their head coach and their top defensive guy. The question I wanted answered after the Giants opener was, which was worse, the Montreal Canadian-like uniforms or the players inside the uniforms?
That was awful. It was, whenever they do that, it's awful. I saw the Pittsburgh.
Every time they've worn red jerseys, but these were totally stupid. These made no sense. And the tan pants, they look like khakis.
They look like they were in pajamas. I don't know what was going on out there, but listen, being a Giant fan, it's going to be a long season. I don't think they get more than 6 wins this year, if that.
Oh, I think if they get 6, it's cause for a parade.
Yeah, I think I'll break out the Lowenbrow if they get that.
Exactly.
Patriots, listen, 1-0. If they're competitive and they stay that way, how long do you give Gerard Mayo, in your opinion, if they don't get to that, that playoff championship kind of caliber?
I think you got to give him at least 3 years.
Okay.
I think he gets 3 years because he's Kraft's guy, and he was handpicked by Kraft. He's the guy Kraft wanted. He's not Belichick, so that works in his favor in Kraft's eyes. I think you give him 3-4 years at the least. And look, just the most overrated week in sports history is week 1 of the NFL, because there's 16 teams that think they're going to the Super Bowl, and there's 16 teams that think they're never going to win a game.
Right. You're right.
And 3 teams in our area all lost, but they had different losses. I mean, the Patriots won, so everybody was happy. The Jets defense stunk on Monday night. It was awful, right? And that's supposed to be their calling card. And but I think the Jets have a much better chance to have a decent year than the Giants do.
I agree with that, because it's just too scattered. They're I think they're trying to rebuild on the go. I think Joe Shine, I think his job may be on the line this year because of that.
Well, him and Dable.
Yeah, the ball, I'm not sure. I know that Shine, with that stupid Hard Knocks thing, made him look really, really bad, Joe. Really bad.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, both Shane and Dable are on the hot seat.
Yeah. Now the Knicks, Celtics are going to be favored to win the championship again. The Knicks, they use the Villanova College connection. I don't think I've ever seen this, Joe. I've never seen, since watching basketball, the team collect players from a championship college team and put them out there. I think it's new. I think it's exciting. And Jalen Brunson, I think he should have been considered more for maybe the MVP award. I know he's 5. I think he should have been higher. He willed the Knicks. And despite all those injuries last year, and they were just wiped out, they still got the second seed. They still won the playoff round. I think they were just out of gas at the end. What do you think about?
By the 7th, yes.
Yeah.
Look. First off, they have a phenomenal coach in Tibbs. He's tremendous. You're right about Brunson. He's great. The whole Villanova idea is crazy. The big key for them this year is, can Mitchell Robinson stay healthy? And if he doesn't, what do they do in the middle? I think they'll miss Hartenstein a lot more than people are giving him credit for.
I agree. He was listen, he got the rebounds. He made a lot of nice passes as a center. He was a good team player. I don't know if Randall could play center at 6'11". I don't know. Maybe he can, maybe he can't. We'll see. But I agree with you. I think Mitchell Robinson is really the key, and he's been injured for the last couple of years. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen.
Very injury prone.
Yes, very much so. I got one more question for you before I let you go, Joe. What do you think about this wild card thing? I mean, do you think teams, and I'm going MLB now, NBA is almost the same, but in the Major League Baseball, you had a division winners, and that was it. They played. Then they let in one wild card. I didn't have a problem with that, really, because there were some teams out there that by the end of the year were better than the division leaders. But now 3 wild cards in each division, 3 or 4 wild, I know 6, 10 wild. I don't know how many wild cards are in there anymore. Do you think that the teams really are concerned about winning divisions like they used to? I mean, if I'm a player, I think I would be. But do you think the overall thing in the locker room is, we're getting a wild card, don't worry about it?
I think you still want to win, because if you're one of the top 2 wild cards, if you're one of the top 2 division winners, you get their first round bye. But that hasn't proven to be that successful. Teams that have gotten the first round bye are playing teams that are already into the playoffs, have already won a series, and have some momentum. I don't mind. I think 12 would be it. There's 3 wild cards from each league now. You still don't have – you have under 50% of the teams making the playoffs. NBA, you've got over. And with that stupid play-in, NFL, you've got over. NHL, you've got over. So I think baseball is still in a good place. I think those best of 3s are exciting because they're such a crapshoot. And then the winner of those series playing a team that had a bye, like I said, they have momentum going, and that they can build off that. I don't. And look, it's all done for television. It's
sure.
And the other thing that it's done, it keeps fans interested longer, because more teams have a chance to be in the race for a wild card. You look at the standings today, there's teams that are in a race for a wild card that if it was in the old days, they'd be SOL.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have a chance, and their fans would be out and probably following football. And that's the last thing Major League Baseball wants at this time of the year, is for their fans to drift over to football and not be following baseball. So I don't have a problem with it.
That's true. And you think about it too, as far as baseball goes, there's not you can look at teams and by the end of the year and say, well, these 4 teams are going to be in it. It's hard to do. Football, NBA, you pretty much know, after halfway through the season, who the 4 teams are, the top teams are going to be. So MLB does do that really well. Baseball, if the pitcher's hot, and if you can get your starting rotation right, anything happens. So, I
agree.
Very, very true. And Joe, if you ever get the itch to do national broadcasting again, you get back with me. I mean, we're doing
that itch won't be scratched, but I'm always happy to come on with you.
Okay, that sounds good, Joe. Listen, folks, my favorite sports broadcaster growing up, I listened to him all the time. A true Connecticut sports legend. You got to put him up there. He's, I don't know if you can put up with Steve Young and Romanowski or the players.
I would say no.
But as far as an influencer, as far as a guy that loves his sports and did a hell of a job, he was on there. Joe D'Ambrosio. Joe, thank you so much for coming on with me.
Thank you, my friend. Anytime.
Okay.